Michael Johnson had always believed that dreams were built slowly, piece by piece like a house made of bricks. For years, he and his wife Jennifer worked long hours, saved carefully, and sacrificed vacations just to one day own a home they could truly call theirs. That dream finally came true when they moved into a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs, where oak trees lined the streets and the sound of children's laughter filled the air in the evenings. Their new home wasn't the biggest or the fanciest, but to them, it was perfect. The house had a wide front yard with soft grass that glowed golden in the sunlight, a porch large enough for 2 rocking chairs, and a small garden space Jennifer had already claimed as her own. The air always smelled fresh in the morning, and at night the sky showed more stars than they had seen while living in the city. For Michael and Jennifer, this wasn't just a house, it was a reward for years of patience and love. One warm Saturday afternoon, Michael decided it was time to finally slow down and enjoy the life they had built. He walked into the kitchen, filled 2 tall glasses with cold lemonade, and added a few ice cubes that clinked like little bells. Jennifer, sitting at the dining table, was flipping through the pages of her favorite novel. "Come outside with me," Michael said with a smile. "Let's sit on the porch for a while." "We've earned it." Jennifer looked up, her eyes soft. "I like that idea." They carried their chairs out, placing them side by side on the porch. The sun was gentle. The breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass, and the sound of birds echoed through the trees. For the first time in weeks, they both felt calm. Michael leaned back in his chair, sipping his lemonade. "Can you believe this is ours?" he asked quietly. Jennifer smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm dreaming. But this," she gestured to the house, the yard, the porch. "This feels like home." They sat there for a long time talking about their plans. Michael wanted to build a small shed for his tools. Jennifer dreamed of filling the garden with roses, daisies, and lavender. They laughed about painting the front door a bold color, something cheerful that would make the house feel alive. Every word they spoke carried love. Every smile carried peace. It was the kind of simple joy that people often overlook, but for them it was everything. But across the street, behind closed curtains, someone was watching. Karen Miller had lived in the neighborhood for years. She was known for being sharp-tongued and always ready to find fault in others. Some neighbors avoided her altogether, while others endured her constant complaints. Karen liked things done her way. She wanted the lawns trimmed perfectly, the sidewalks clear, and the noise kept low. She considered herself the unofficial guardian of the neighborhood, but in truth she was more of a watcher than a helper. That afternoon, Karen noticed Michael and Jennifer sitting on their porch. She narrowed her eyes, pulling the curtain just enough to see them clearly. She muttered to herself. New people. Acting too comfortable already. Her mind began to race with thoughts. She wondered if they really belonged there. Maybe they were just visiting. Maybe they weren't supposed to be in that house at all. She didn't ask. She didn't greet them. Instead, she sat there, building stories in her mind. While Michael and Jennifer laughed over memories of their college days, Karen frowned, as if their happiness was an insult to her. She convinced herself that something was wrong, even though nothing was. On one side of the street sat Michael and Jennifer, 2 people who had worked hard, hoping only for peace, enjoying their lemonade under the gentle sun. Their laughter was soft, their words filled with dreams for the future. They saw the neighborhood as a place to grow, to build a life filled with kindness. On the other side of the street sat Karen, alone, restless, and suspicious. She felt a sense of control over the community, and the sight of Michael and Jennifer enjoying their porch unsettled her. She thought, who are they to sit there like they own the place? The truth, of course, was simple. They did own it. But Karen didn't want to believe that. Jennifer noticed Karen once or twice that afternoon. She saw the curtain move slightly and felt Karen's eyes on them. For a moment it made her uncomfortable, but she chose not to let it ruin their peace. "Michael," she whispered, "I think our neighbor is watching us." Michael chuckled. "Maybe she's just curious. People do that when new folks move in." Jennifer nodded, trying to push the feeling away. She had always been gentle by nature, choosing kindness over confrontation. She hoped that with time, Karen would come around and accept them as part of the community. Michael, on the other hand, carried a stronger sense of pride. He had worked extra shifts, skipped luxuries, and spent years of his life saving for this home. To him, sitting on that porch was a declaration that all their struggles had been worth it. He wasn't about to let anyone make him feel unwelcome. This is our home, he thought firmly. We belong here no matter what anyone thinks. As the afternoon stretched on, the couple's conversation grew lighter. Michael shared a funny story from his office about how his coworker spilled coffee on himself during a meeting. Jennifer laughed so hard she nearly spilled her lemonade. Her laughter was like music, bright and unrestrained. For Michael, hearing her laugh in their new home was the most beautiful sound in the world. He reached over and held her hand. "I'm glad we're here together," he said softly. Jennifer squeezed his hand back. "Me too. This is exactly where we're meant to be." Inside her house, Karen's frown deepened. Their laughter, which felt like music to Michael, sounded like noise to her. She tapped her fingers against the table, feeling her patience run out. "They don't belong here," she muttered again. "I know it. I can feel it." She thought about walking across the street to ask questions, but instead, her mind turned toward another idea, one that would cause more trouble than she could imagine. She picked up her phone, staring at the screen for a moment, then looked out the window again. Michael and Jennifer were still laughing, their hands gently resting together. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "If no one else will do something, I will," she whispered. Back on the porch, Michael and Jennifer were completely unaware of the storm that was slowly building across the street. To them, the day was perfect. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow across their yard. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. "It's beautiful," she said softly. Michael smiled, his heart full. "Yes, it is. And it's ours." For that brief moment, their world felt safe. The house stood strong behind them. The yard stretched peacefully before them, and their love wrapped them in comfort. But while they were lost in that peace, Karen was preparing to make a choice that would shatter it. The evening breeze grew cooler, and the sound of cicadas filled the air. Michael and Jennifer sat together in silence, holding hands, believing they had finally found the life they had dreamed of. Across the street, behind closed curtains, Karen dialed a number. The story of peace was about to collide with the noise of suspicion, and nothing would ever feel the same again. Karen Miller sat at her dining table, her phone pressed tightly in her hand. The curtain beside her window was slightly pulled back, giving her a clear view of Michael and Jennifer, who were still sitting peacefully on their porch. To any ordinary person, the sight was nothing more than a husband and wife enjoying their Saturday afternoon. But to Karen, it was something else entirely. She didn't see peace, she saw a problem. Her heart raced faster than it needed to. She convinced herself that she was protecting the neighborhood. In her mind, she wasn't just a resident, she was a guardian. "Someone has to keep this place safe," she whispered to herself. "And if no one else will, then I will." Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed the familiar number. 911, the call that should never have been made. The line rang only once, before a calm dispatcher's voice answered. 911, what is your emergency? Karen took a deep breath, trying to make her voice sound urgent. "Yes, hello. I need to report something suspicious. There are two people sitting outside a house across from me. I don't think they belong here. They're just sitting there, watching everything. I'm worried." The dispatcher's tone stayed steady. "Ma'am, can you describe them?" Karen peeked through the curtain again. "It's a man and a woman. The man is tall with dark hair. The woman has light brown hair. They've been sitting out there for hours. It just doesn't look right." "Ma'am," the dispatcher asked carefully, "do you know if they live in the house they're sitting in front of?" Karen's lips tightened. "No, people like them don't live here. I know my neighborhood. I've lived here for years and I've never seen them before. They must be pretending." The dispatcher paused, clearly trying to sort through the information. "Okay, ma'am. We'll send an officer to check. But please understand, sitting outside your own home is not a crime." Karen cut the call quickly, her heart pounding. She didn't want to hear the dispatcher's reasoning. In her mind, she had done her duty. She placed the phone on the table, folded her arms, and kept her eyes fixed on Michael and Jennifer. Meanwhile, on the other side of the street, Michael and Jennifer were still enjoying their quiet afternoon. The golden light of the setting sun cast soft shadows across their porch. Jennifer had started reading aloud from her book, her voice gentle and warm. Michael listened with a smile, occasionally interrupting with little jokes that made her laugh. They were lost in their world, unaware of what Karen had just set in motion. At one point, Jennifer turned her head slightly and caught a glimpse of Karen's curtain moving again. She sighed softly. "She's watching us again, Michael." Michael shrugged, trying to brush it off. "Let her watch. Maybe she's just curious. We can't control what people think." Jennifer nodded, though a small knot of worry settled in her stomach. She didn't like the feeling of being observed like that. But she trusted Michael's calmness and tried to let it go. The sound of sirens. Just as the couple was settling back into their moment, a distant sound began to rise in the quiet air. At first it was faint, a low hum carried on the breeze. But slowly it grew louder, sharper, unmistakable. Jennifer's face grew pale. She set her book down. "Michael, do you hear that?" Michael turned his head, listening. The sound was now clear. Sirens. Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street, bouncing off the trees and houses. 2 police cars rolled steadily toward their home, their tires crunching against the pavement. Michael stood quickly, his lemonade glass tipping over on the porch floor. "What in the world?" Jennifer rose too, her hands trembling. Why would police be coming here? The cars stopped directly in front of their house. Neighbors began peeking out of doors and windows, whispering to each other, curious about the commotion. The peaceful Saturday afternoon was gone, replaced by flashing lights and restless murmurs. 2 officers stepped out of the cars. One was a middle-aged man with a calm expression, and the other was a younger woman who carried herself with quiet professionalism. They approached the porch carefully, as if unsure of what they were walking into. Michael raised his hand slightly, not out of guilt, but out of shock. "Officers, is everything okay?" The older officer spoke first. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity at this address. We need to ask a few questions." Jennifer's voice shook as she tried to speak. "Suspicious? But we live here. This is our house." The younger officer glanced at her kindly, but still kept her tone professional. "Do you have proof of residence? Any identification or house documents?" Jennifer hurried inside, her heart pounding in her chest. She returned moments later with a folder, her hands barely steady as she handed it over. "Here, these are our papers. We just bought this house last month. Everything is in our name." The officers reviewed the documents carefully. After a few minutes, they nodded in agreement. "It seems clear you're the homeowners," the older officer said. Michael let out a long breath. "Then why are we being questioned like criminals?" Before the officers could answer, Karen came storming out of her house. Her steps were sharp, her voice already raised. "See? I told you something was wrong," she shouted, pointing directly at Michael and Jennifer. "They don't belong here. They're pretending. They're trying to fool everyone." The neighbors gasped softly, whispering among themselves. Some shook their heads, others folded their arms, watching closely. The younger officer frowned. "Ma'am, they've shown us proof. They are the rightful homeowners." But Karen wasn't ready to stop. "You're being fooled. Look at them. They don't look like they belong here. People like them don't move into this neighborhood. I've lived here for years. I know what I'm talking about." Jennifer's face flushed with shame and hurt. Michael clenched his fists at his sides, trying to hold back the anger rising inside him. Embarrassment in front of the neighbors. The scene had now drawn nearly half the block outside. People stood at their porches, arms crossed, eyes wide, whispering about what was unfolding. For Michael and Jennifer, the humiliation was unbearable. Michael spoke, his voice trembling with frustration. "We worked for years to be here. We bought this house with our hard-earned money. And now we're being treated like strangers in our own yard because one person couldn't mind her business." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. She had dreamed of this house as a place of peace, a place of safety. But instead she now stood under flashing lights, surrounded by neighbors' stares, as though she had done something wrong. Finally, the older officer turned to Karen, his voice firm. "Ma'am, you had no right to make this call without evidence. These people are innocent. Sitting on your porch is not suspicious behavior. They belong here and they've proven it." Karen's face turned red. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but no words came. She stomped her foot, glared at Michael and Jennifer, and finally turned back toward her own house, slamming the door behind her. The younger officer looked back at the couple. Her voice softened. "We're sorry you had to go through this. Unfortunately, sometimes calls like this happen. Please know you've done nothing wrong. Michael nodded stiffly. Jennifer whispered, "Thank you." But inside, both felt broken. The officers returned to their cars. The lights faded. The sirens died down. Slowly, the crowd of neighbors drifted back inside. But the silence that followed wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, filled with shame and sadness. When Michael and Jennifer finally went back inside their home, the air no longer felt warm. The house that had been their dream now felt tainted by suspicion and humiliation. Jennifer sat on the couch, her eyes wet with quiet tears. "I just wanted this to be a safe place," she whispered. Michael placed his arm around her shoulders, his jaw tight. "It still is, Jen, but we'll have to be stronger. We can't let one person's bitterness take away what we've worked for." They sat in silence, listening to the clock tick on the wall. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet again, as though nothing had happened. But inside, their hearts carried the weight of an evening they would never forget. The flashing red and blue lights faded slowly as the officers prepared to leave, but the sting of humiliation remained. Michael and Jennifer stood on their porch, the soft evening breeze brushing past them, but instead of comfort, it carried an ache that neither of them could shake. Their neighbors had watched them, judged them, and whispered about them, all because of one false call. Inside the house, Jennifer tried to gather herself. She paced the living room, her hands trembling slightly. "Michael, what just happened out there doesn't even feel real. We were sitting peacefully in our own yard, and suddenly the police are treating us like strangers." Michael's jaw was tight, his voice steady but edged with anger. "We didn't do anything wrong. We belong here. But Karen, she made it look like we're criminals in front of everyone." Jennifer lowered herself onto the couch, her voice breaking. "Do you know how embarrassing it felt to stand there while neighbors stared at us like we were guilty? This was supposed to be our fresh start." Michael sat beside her, placing a hand gently over hers. "I know, Jen, I know it hurts. But we can't let her win. This is our home, and we won't be chased away." Over the next few days, the couple tried to return to normal life. Michael went back to work, and Jennifer spent her mornings planning the small garden she had dreamed of planting. But every time she stepped onto the porch, she felt the heavy weight of Karen's eyes. From behind her curtains, Karen watched. Sometimes it was obvious, the slight twitch of fabric moving when Jennifer looked up. Other times, Jennifer only felt it, a quiet pressure pressing against her peace. Michael noticed it too. One evening, while watering the small patch of grass, he muttered under his breath, "She's still watching." "She doesn't stop," Jennifer sighed. "I just don't understand, Michael. We've done nothing to her. Why is she like this?" Michael shook his head. "Some people carry bitterness, and they want others to feel it too. But we can't give her that power." Still, the weight lingered. Every laugh they shared on the porch felt stolen. Every conversation was interrupted by the thought of Karen behind her window, waiting for another chance to cause trouble. News of the incident spread quietly through the neighborhood. Some neighbors avoided the subject, not wanting to get involved. Others whispered words of sympathy when passing by. One afternoon, Laura Stevens, a kind woman from down the street, stopped by with a basket of muffins. She smiled warmly. "I heard about what happened. I just want you both to know. You're welcome here. Don't let one person's negativity make you feel otherwise." Jennifer's eyes softened. "Thank you, Laura. That means more than you know." Laura nodded. "Karen has always been difficult. You're not the first people she's complained about. She thinks she runs this street, but most of us know better. Don't let her ruin your joy." Michael felt a small sense of relief. At least not everyone believed Karen's lies. But the scar of the police visit was still fresh. A week later, on another quiet evening, Michael and Jennifer sat outside again. They wanted to reclaim their porch, to take back the simple joy that Karen had tried to steal from them. Michael brought out 2 glasses of iced tea while Jennifer rested her book on her lap. For a while, it felt normal again. The sky glowed with the soft colors of sunset, and the breeze carried the distant sound of children laughing down the street. Jennifer leaned her head against Michael's shoulder. "This feels better," she whispered. But the moment didn't last. The sound of a door slamming echoed across the street. Karen stepped out, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp as she glared directly at them. Without saying a word, she pulled out her phone again. Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Michael, is she calling again?" Michael clenched his jaw. "Let's see what happens." Sure enough, within 20 minutes, the faint wail of sirens broke the calm once again. This time, 3 police cars rolled onto the street. Neighbors came out faster than before, curious and eager for drama. Michael stood, his chest rising and falling with controlled frustration. Jennifer held his hand tightly, her heart racing. The officers approached, more cautious this time. The same older officer from before recognized them immediately. His face showed quiet disappointment, not at Michael and Jennifer, but at the situation. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," he said, his tone almost apologetic. "We received another call." Michael exhaled sharply. "From her, I assume?" He pointed toward Karen, who now stood proudly in her yard, arms on her hips. The officer nodded. "Yes, she claims you're disturbing the peace." Jennifer's voice cracked as she spoke. "We were just sitting here, drinking tea, talking quietly. How is that disturbing anything?" The officer sighed. "I believe you. I truly do. But every time a call comes in, we're required to respond. That's the procedure." The neighbors were gathered now, whispering and staring. Some looked sympathetic, but others seemed entertained by the unfolding drama. For Michael and Jennifer, it felt like standing under a spotlight of shame. Michael raised his voice, not out of anger, but out of desperation. "We are in our own yard, on our own property. Why are we being treated like criminals again?" The officer lowered his voice. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but unless you file a report against her for harassment, she will keep doing this." Michael's eyes flicked toward Karen. She was smirking now, enjoying the spectacle. Jennifer's shoulders shook as tears filled her eyes. "Michael," she whispered, "how many times are we going to have to go through this?" Karen stepped forward, loud enough for the entire block to hear. "You see? I told you all. They're not normal. Something's wrong with them. Look at how defensive they are. If they had nothing to hide, why would they be so upset?" Michael's patience broke. He stepped toward her, though still keeping a respectful distance. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with restrained anger. "We're upset because we're being harassed in our own home. We've done nothing wrong, and you know it. You're not protecting this neighborhood, you're poisoning it," the crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked shocked at Michael's boldness. Karen's face flushed red, but she stood her ground. "I have every right to keep this street safe, and if I have to call every single day, I will." This time the younger officer stepped forward, her voice sharper than before. "Ma'am, enough. You've already wasted police resources once. Calling us without real evidence is not protecting anyone, it's harassment. If this continues, there will be consequences." Karen blinked, stunned by the officer's firmness. For a moment, her confidence faltered. She opened her mouth to argue but closed it again, retreating slowly toward her porch. The officers turned back to Michael and Jennifer. "We're sorry again. We know this isn't fair, but you two have rights and we encourage you to file a report. Otherwise, she may not stop." Michael nodded, though his chest still burned with anger. Jennifer wiped her tears, whispering, "Thank you." After the police left and the neighbors slowly retreated to their homes, silence fell again on the street. But for Michael and Jennifer, that silence felt heavier than ever. Inside their home, Jennifer curled up on the couch, her voice breaking. "I wanted this house to be a place of peace, Michael. A place where we could build happy memories, but now, every time I step outside, I feel like I'm being judged, watched, and punished for nothing." Michael sat beside her, pulling her close. "This isn't what we imagined, I know. But Jen, this is still our home. We can't let one bitter neighbor take away everything we've worked for." She looked up at him, her eyes red from tears. "Do you really think it will stop?" Michael paused, his expression heavy. "I don't know, but I do know this, we won't run. We didn't sacrifice years of our lives just to let someone like her destroy our happiness." They sat together in the dim glow of their living room lamp, holding on to each other tightly. The house was still theirs. The love was still strong, but the dream of peace they had carried was now clouded by a battle they hadn't asked for. And though the night outside was quiet, they both knew Karen wasn't finished. Michael and Jennifer sat together in the living room the next morning. The soft golden light of the sun entered through the curtains, filling the room with warmth. But in their hearts there was no peace. The day before had been heavy. Karen's anger, the arrival of the police, and the embarrassment of being questioned on their own property had drained them both. Jennifer leaned on Michael's shoulder. "Do you think she'll stop now?" she whispered. Her voice was filled with both worry and exhaustion. Michael took her hand gently. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we cannot let her control our life like this. This is our home, our peace. We worked hard for this place, and we have every right to enjoy it. For a while, they just sat there in silence, holding on to each other. Outside, the world seemed calm. The trees swayed gently, birds chirped, and the street was quiet. But they both knew this calm could break at any moment, especially if Karen decided to make another scene. Later that day, Michael received a call from one of the neighbors, Mr. Anderson, an older gentleman who had lived in the community for more than 30 years. His voice was steady but kind. "Michael," Mr. Anderson said, "I saw what happened yesterday. Everyone in the neighborhood is talking about it. I just want you to know, you and Jennifer have done nothing wrong. You two are good people. Don't let her behavior make you feel otherwise." Michael was touched by the support. "Thank you, sir," he replied. "It means a lot to us." "It's been difficult," Mr. Anderson sighed. "We've all had our share of problems with Karen. She has always been difficult. But what she did yesterday, calling the police on you in your own yard, that was too far." Michael felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't just them. Others had noticed too. That evening, Jennifer suggested they take a walk around the neighborhood. At first, Michael hesitated. He worried Karen might appear again, ready with another complaint or insult. But Jennifer convinced him. "We can't let fear trap us inside," she said softly. "This is our home too." So hand in hand, they walked down the quiet street. To their surprise, several neighbors waved at them warmly. Mrs. Taylor from across the street came over and gave Jennifer a quick hug. "You two don't deserve any of this," she said firmly. "We're with you." Michael and Jennifer exchanged a look of surprise. They hadn't expected so much kindness. For the first time in days, they felt less alone. But of course Karen noticed. She stood at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, glaring. Her face was tight with disapproval as she muttered something under her breath. Michael heard her whisper, "Attention seekers," but he chose not to respond. Jennifer tightened her grip on his hand. "Don't react," she whispered. "That's what she wants." So they kept walking, heads held high. The next morning, a knock came at their door. Michael opened it cautiously and found 2 police officers standing there again. His heart sank. "Not again," he muttered under his breath. The officer, a tall man with a calm expression, spoke first. "Good morning, sir. We received another call from your neighbor. She claims there's a disturbance here." Jennifer stepped forward, her voice steady but polite. "Officers, there's no disturbance. We were just having breakfast together inside."
"She has been calling you without reason."
"This is harassment." The officers exchanged a look. One of them nodded. "Ma'am, we understand. You're not the first to mention problems with this neighbor. We are required to check, but it's becoming clear what's happening here." Michael felt a mixture of anger and sadness. "We don't want trouble," he said. "We just want peace. We've done nothing to deserve this." The officer gave him a reassuring look. "We know, don't worry, sir. We'll make a note of this in the report. If she continues, there could be consequences for her misuse of emergency services." Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. "Consequences?" "Yes," the officer explained. "Calling 911 repeatedly without a real emergency is considered abuse of the system. If she doesn't stop, she could face fines or legal action." Michael felt a small spark of hope. Maybe justice was possible. That evening, Jennifer sat at her desk writing in her journal. She had always used writing to process her emotions. The page slowly filled with words. Why does she hate us so much? We've never harmed her. We just live our life quietly. Why can't she let us be? But today gave me hope. Maybe people are starting to see the truth. Maybe we're not alone. She closed the journal and placed it on the shelf, feeling a little lighter. Michael, meanwhile, sat on the porch with a cup of tea. He looked at the sunset, painting the sky in orange and pink hues. For the first time in a long while, he felt the beauty of the moment. The world outside still held peace, even if Karen tried to disrupt it. Jennifer joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you think this will end soon?" she asked softly. Michael thought for a moment before answering. "It has to. Lies can't last forever. Truth always comes to light." The following weekend, something surprising happened. The neighborhood held a small community meeting at the local park. Michael and Jennifer were hesitant to go at first, worried that Karen might cause a scene. But when they arrived, they were welcomed warmly. Neighbors spoke openly. Many shared their frustrations about Karen's behavior. Stories came out. How she had yelled at children for playing too loudly. How she had argued with others about harmless things. Finally, Mrs. Taylor spoke up. We all saw what happened when she called the police. Enough is enough. Michael and Jennifer don't deserve this. No one does. The group murmured in agreement. Karen, who had come to the meeting as well, stood up angrily. You're all against me. They are the problem, not me. But this time the crowd didn't back her. They stood with Michael and Jennifer. For the first time, Karen's power seemed to shrink. Her voice trembled, and though she continued to argue, it was clear the community no longer supported her. Michael felt Jennifer squeeze his hand. See, she whispered, the truth is coming out. That night, as they returned home, Jennifer smiled for the first time in days. We're not alone anymore, she said. People see us. They believe us, Michael nodded. And soon Karen will realize that no matter how loud she shouts, truth is stronger. For the first time since the nightmare began, their hearts felt lighter, but deep down they both knew the battle wasn't over yet. Karen would not give up so easily, and they had to be ready for whatever came next. The days following the community meeting brought a new sense of relief to Michael and Jennifer. For the first time in weeks, they didn't feel completely alone. The neighborhood had seen the truth. The people around them, who once remained silent, had finally spoken up. But Karen was not someone who gave up easily. She stayed quiet for a few days, but Michael could feel the tension. She avoided looking at them when they stepped outside, yet her presence lingered. Sometimes he would catch her peeking through her curtains, watching. Jennifer noticed too. She's planning something, she whispered one evening as they sat on the porch sipping tea. Michael gave a small sigh. Probably, but this time we're ready. The following week, another knock came at their door. Michael braced himself, half expecting more officers. But instead it was Mr. Anderson, the elderly neighbor who had always shown kindness. Michael, Jennifer, he said warmly, I thought you should know. The neighborhood association has decided to file a formal complaint against Karen. Enough people signed the petition. She won't be able to harass you or anyone else without consequences anymore. Jennifer's eyes widened. Really? Yes, Mr. Anderson said with a firm nod. What she's been doing isn't just rude, it's disruptive. We want peace in this neighborhood, and we all agree that her behavior crossed the line. Michael felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, truly, we didn't expect this kind of support. Mr. Anderson smiled. You've both shown patience and kindness through all of this. You didn't fight her with anger. You showed respect even when it wasn't given to you. People see that. People notice. Jennifer's eyes grew misty. She placed her hand on her heart. That means a lot. We've been so tired of the stress. All we wanted was to enjoy our home. That night, Michael and Jennifer sat together in the living room. The atmosphere felt lighter. Jennifer looked at her husband. Maybe this is the turning point. Maybe she'll finally understand. Michael gave a gentle smile. Even if she doesn't, we have something stronger now. We have the truth and the community behind us. They held hands in silence, letting the comfort of togetherness ease the weight of the past weeks. But Karen was not done yet. 2 nights later, as Michael was watering the plants in the yard, Karen stormed out of her house. Her voice was sharp and filled with bitterness. You think everyone's on your side now? She snapped. You think you've won? Michael remained calm. He put down the watering can and looked at her with steady eyes. Karen, we never wanted to fight with you. We never wanted any of this. We just want to live peacefully in our own home. Karen's face twisted with frustration. Peacefully? You're always out here laughing, talking, making noise. This was my street before you moved in. Jennifer, who had stepped out after hearing the commotion, joined her husband. Her voice was soft, but her words were firm. Karen, this street doesn't belong to any one person. It's a community, and communities work when people respect each other. For a moment, Karen faltered. Her eyes shifted as if she didn't know what to say. Then, with a huff, she turned and walked back inside, slamming her door behind her. Michael exhaled slowly. Jennifer touched his arm. You handled that well, he nodded. It's not worth arguing. We've said our truth. The next morning brought an unexpected turn. A police car stopped in front of Karen's house. Michael and Jennifer, standing at their window, watched as the officers spoke with her at length. Though they couldn't hear the words, they could see the seriousness on the officers' faces. Karen's posture shrank as the conversation went on. Jennifer whispered, Do you think? Michael nodded. I think this is about the call she made. After nearly half an hour, the police left and Karen stood at her doorway looking smaller than ever. She didn't glance toward Michael and Jennifer's house. Instead, she closed her door quietly, without another word. For the first time, it felt like the storm was truly passing. That evening, the couple decided to invite a few neighbors over for coffee as a gesture of gratitude. Mr. Anderson came, along with Mrs. Taylor and a few others. The small gathering was warm and filled with laughter. The air was light, without tension. Mrs. Taylor raised her cup. "To peace in our neighborhood," she said with a smile. "To peace," everyone echoed. Jennifer looked around the table and felt her heart swell. A few weeks ago, she and Michael had felt isolated and targeted. Now they felt surrounded by kindness. Michael caught her gaze and gave her a smile. "See, we're not alone," Jennifer nodded. "Not anymore." The following morning, Jennifer sat on the porch with her journal. She opened a fresh page and began to write. "This journey has been hard, but it taught us something. Sometimes the loudest voices are not the truest. Sometimes the truth takes time to be seen. But in the end, kindness wins, patience wins, and peace always finds its way back." She closed the journal, took a deep breath, and let the morning sun warm her face. Michael stepped out and handed her a cup of tea. "What did you write?" he asked. She smiled softly. "Just thoughts. Just gratitude." They sat together in silence, sipping tea, watching the quiet street. For the first time in a long while, the air felt calm. The world around them seemed to breathe again. A week later, Karen appeared outside again. But this time there was no shouting, no glaring. She simply walked to her mailbox, glanced briefly toward Michael and Jennifer, then quickly looked away. Jennifer noticed. "Do you think she's changing?" Michael shrugged gently. "Maybe. Or maybe she just realized she can't keep living in conflict. Either way, it's not our burden anymore." Jennifer smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Exactly. We've done our part. Now we live." That evening, the two of them sat by the fire pit in their backyard, the soft crackle of flames filling the air. The stars shone brightly above, scattered across the sky like diamonds. Jennifer whispered, "You know, even with all the trouble, I wouldn't trade this home for anything. This is where we belong." Michael kissed her forehead gently, "And no one can take that away from us." They stayed there under the stars, the warmth of the fire wrapping around them, their hearts finally at peace.